It was an incredible moment. I wished everyone could have seen it. Congressman Ron Paul knows his stuff. And he said to Bernanke, how do you define a dollar? Now that's a really loaded question for constitutional scholars. They know that Jefferson defined a dollar as this many grains of gold or this many grains of silver. So Ron Paul knew exactly what he was doing when he said to the head of our central bank, how do you define a dollar? And the amazing answer that Chairman Bernanke gave was, well, a dollar is it's what it will buy. That's the opposite of what the founders had in mind. It's not what it buys moment to moment. A dollar is a measure. It's specific. For an agency that was created in 1913 to play a very passive role of temporarily providing liquidity, now the Fed is this behemoth. So this government agency decides what is the value of the dollar, and their idea is that if it loses 2 or 3% a year, no problem. They have decided that a little bit of inflation is just fine. They refer to benign inflation. For a government that was set up to protect private property rights, I think it's highly immoral. Of all things that shouldn't be floating, I think a unit of account, a measure, is the most important. A measure has to be fixed, has to be constant. Instead of having more government control over money, more ability to manipulate it to cover the sins of government, what we should do is go back to the intentions of the founders. I'm really building on an idea of issuing Treasury obligations redeemable in gold. Let's say the U.S. Treasury announces a new instrument. You, as the holder of this instrument, if you buy it today, will either get $2,400 or an ounce of gold. We would begin to link the value of the dollar in the future to gold. Let's put a marker out there. Have the Treasury issue 5-year notes where at the end of 5 years you could redeem in gold. Gold is the legacy of what had always been the anchor for U.S. money.
First, I think it's very important to know that the COVID-19 pandemics just has accelerated certain trends which we had seen before and which actually were discussed in Davos this year, like the lack of inclusion, the lack of paying sufficient attention to the environment. So what we will see now is acceleration of those trends, and of course, a unique opportunity to reset our global agenda, to do something about all those negative developments. I include also the lack of international cooperation. Because if we don't address those issues, we will end up in a much worse world than we are today. So let's use this window of opportunity and let's recreate a global framework which really is in line with the requirements of a society in the 21st century.
The role of the disruptors and anything that is using distributed ledger technology, whether you call it crypto assets, currencies, or whatever, and it's far from the bitcoins that we used to talk about a year ago, that is clearly shaking the system.
Not put that up there. Silence with that one.
Remember, that to happen, okay, under the current legal framework, some country would have to use a crypto asset as its currency.
All the money. Yeah, it's all the money, because what we're really talking about with this idea of the Internet of Value is creating a single global payment network that connects literally everyone.
Ripple is not an ordinary company. We are not here to have a small market share or do X, do Y, and make small amount of money or something to happen. We are here to make a dent in the universe.
Now when you combine then those new apps, those new devices, those new databases with an interoperability layer, boom. I mean, that changes the world overnight. And I think we're so close to that, and that will create this Cambrian explosion.
When you buy it at the click of a button, your bank transfers funds to digital currency held at the central bank. In turn, the central bank immediately forwards it to the supermarket's bank, which would credit the supermarket's accounts. All of that in a split of a second. All nearly for free and any time. Do you see what just happened? The central bank is now the trusted intermediary. That enables all the banks in the Eurozone to actually transfer instantly at virtually no cost money between them. So I think the role of the disruptors and anything that is using distributed ledger technology, whether you call it crypto assets, currencies, or whatever, and it's far from the bitcoins that we used to talk about a year ago, that is clearly shaking the system, shaking the system, shaking the system.
Asking you, if you look back at the end of your tenure as comptroller of the currency and you're able to accomplish your goal in payments, what does that look like?
I think if I had a 5-year term as comptroller, I think it looks like two things. One is there is a national platform for payments companies out there that don't have to deal with patchwork state laws and all of that. Okay, that's the first thing. That brings everything into the supervisory framework. And the second thing we didn't talk that much about is I'm a believer in decentralization. I think at the end of the day, I think that stable coins and other kind of blockchain-based tokenization of dollars are the most resilient model, for long-term faster payments, better than a central bank monopoly on the payment system. And, nodes on networks tend to be much more fail-safe and resilient than centralized administration. So those two things, I think, would be a big success.
With central bank stimulus weakening the dollar and gold being only about $100 short of its all-time high, a question has started to arise: can gold replace the US dollar as the world's reserve currency? The dollar has enjoyed this status for decades, but since it detached itself from the gold standard in 1971, it's essentially consistently weakened on a macro level. Confidence in the U.S. government and the political system in the U.S. is one of the keys, and gold doesn't have that issue of a loss of confidence. But what it does have is a problem with transportability. That's why it's more likely that a currency backed in gold, or even a digital asset backed in physical gold, could potentially replace the dollar much more easily than the actual physical bar of gold could.
transact with anybody who's connected to the internet, and that's a good thing for stablecoins. And then ultimately, really, Chris, I think the real use case of crypto is in a world of increasing integration and increasing globalization. It really makes no sense to think that anyone across borders who wants to transact with each other has to pay a foreign exchange fee to change yen into dollars, let's just say, and then also to pay a money transmitter for the act of hitting the send button and sending that money across a proprietary platform. Imagine if there was a single token that was recognized on both sides of that divide. And when you received it, you could cash it out into your local currency. And when I received it, I could cash it out into my local currency without the need to change it, right? Those kinds of things occupy so many trillions of dollars of friction in the system that it's, when people say there's no killer app to crypto, I sort of think, no. The killer app of crypto is the simplest application, which is avoiding frictions. That's what it's all about, much as the internet did for sending information.
And I'm optimistic for 3 reasons. One, we are out now more sober after the shock of the pandemic, recognizing we live in a more shock-prone world and we need to build resilience for the future. 2, we have this unique opportunity to pour in the economy a massive stimulus. And it is just common sense that we use the money to build the economy of tomorrow, not to return to where we were yesterday. And 3, we are seeing in the stimulus already in place, green shoots appearing, investment in, for example, electric vehicles, climate resilient infrastructure, encouraging less carbon intensive industries. We are at a point when we can do forward planning for the financing that we are going to provide. And we have plenty.
As far as the currency devaluations, I've been complaining about that for a long time. And I believe that we will all eventually, and probably very much sooner than a lot of people understand or think, we will be all at a level playing field. Because that's the only way it's fair. That's the only way that you can fairly compete in trade and other things.
I think we're very close on opening financial services and the currency stability deal, which is essentially an IMF deal.
This is intended to be a level playing field, whether you're MoneyGram or you're a bank or you're an online or you're PayPal. This is intended to be a level playing field.
There's a new rail created that's a blockchain rail that both bank and non-banks can participate in to settle transactions through a token. It's coming our way faster than we like, perhaps faster than the 5-year time frame you outlined.
Digitization of the plumbing and other aspects of our financial system, including payment transfers, et cetera, it's here.
This year.
It's here. It is here already.
Yeah, I see. It's here. Yeah, it is here.
The, what I'll say, just the natural economic forces that it unleashes, taking fat out of the system, for lack of a better term, it's happening. Now we have to recognize that that's happening, recognize our mission, safety and soundness, investor protection, fair markets, and ensure that as that digitization takes place, we're being true to those principles. But we should not be fighting that digitization, because if we fight it, it will go around us.
What are you going to tell your grandchildren? What are you going to tell your children 20, 25 years from now? What did you do, Grandpa? What did you do, Grandma, during the greatest transformation of motherfucking wealth in the history of the world? What did you do other than sit on your fucking hands? What did you do to take advantage of the greatest transformation of wealth in the history of the planet? What did you do? Not a fucking thing. That's what you're going to say.